Hi, welcome to the Teacher Support Podcast brought to you by New Teacher University, and I'm your host, Dr. Terry Ross, and I'm also your principal. This podcast is dedicated to new teachers. However, we are rebranding because what I found out is that all teachers have been using the information from these podcasts. However, New Teacher University is dedicated to supporting teacher retention through intentional coaching, mentoring, and wellness, because wellness is so important for our teachers, and we need to make it has always been important. However, we want the new teachers coming into the profession to make sure that they take care of themselves first and their families, because if they're not well and their families are not well, how can they support our classrooms to the best of their ability? So for administrators out there watching this, we're always sharing wellness strategies. Even our instructional strategies are geared toward wellness, because it's geared toward making sure that our new teachers have what they need so that they can feel whole in the classroom. And today I'm so excited that I have Miss Olivia Odileke back with me. By popular demand, today she's going to talk about her book, Spark Curiosity, A Guide to Quick Inquiry. And I'm just excited to have her with us. I'm not going to take any more time. Olivia, talk to us about your book and tell us what led you to write this book.
Well, actually, thank you so much, Terry, for having me back. It is indeed a pleasure to always be able to share with teachers who are eager to innovate their instructional practices. Spark Curiosity came from my search to spark curiosity in my students. I was literally like when I first started teaching, I had all these great ideas, all these things I wanted to do, all these hands on things. But I realized that to get to that, I needed to get them interested. There needed to be like a doorway. And I started doing a lot of research. I started looking for books that had simple strategies, not stuff that's going to take me 3, 4 weeks. I mean, I got to
Yes.
read thick manuals. It's like everything was like these thick manuals, how to do like hands on, because I was a science teacher and all this hands on stuff. And I'm studying it. I'm like, I'm going back to school. I'm like, what is, and then when you read it, it's still boring. It's just directions. It's step one, step two, step three. We don't learn that way. We don't learn that way. The way the brain works is it needs to be a little confused. When it's off of equilibrium, then we absorb information the quickest. So, first of all, how often as a teacher are we having our students off equilibrium? They don't know what's coming next.
Yes.
How often is that happening? First of all, that's something to think about. Because most of the time in class, everything is direction, step one, step two, step three. My question to you, Terry, in life, are we following steps? Do you have steps for living the best life? You got your 8 steps?
Absolutely, we do not. What we have is we have some routine things that we know we have to do, but life needs novelty. You need some excitement in there every now and then to let you know that you are alive, and to let you know that that you're worthy. One of the things that I used to do as a classroom teacher and even as a principal, I would sometimes put things on the wall a little twisted, because the brain makes you want to straighten it up, but at least you noticed it.
At least you noticed that
I
something
would
was off.
Yeah, I would do things just a little off to make sure that you were on.
I would misspell things sometimes on the board. And I'm like, oh, I made a mistake. And I was modeling that it's okay to make mistakes too.
Yes.
It's like all of these little tricks, because it's kind of like we have to fool people into learning. I'm sorry. Even as a college student going to, for example, I'm going to go off topic just a little bit because I need to make this example. So you have a comedian coming, right? Everybody's showing up for the comedian. All right. They're gonna have a jam-packed house, right? But Eric Dyson shows up at my university. Eric Dyson, top
Yes.
thinker,
Absolutely.
moving forward. During Black History Month, 7 people show up for that.
Wow.
And 1,500 kids show up for, but why? Because you want to be entertained. You want to, and I said, listen, we got to change this thing up. I'm like, and when I was the chair of Black History Month, what we did was we brought the speaker, but we didn't tell the people the speaker was going to be there. and the speaker spoke first before we brought the comedian out. Because I said these
Yes.
people not gonna want the knowledge. They're not gonna show up for education. They're not gonna show up. So as leaders, we have to fool our people sometimes, and sometimes we got to fool our kids into learning because the
Yes.
brain is just wired to just have fun and be passive. So I was very unethical with a lot of things I would do just because I know how what people gravitate to. And that's kind of how this book came about.
Well, I
It
want
was
to
like,
reframe that for you. You weren't
yes.
unethical, you were innovative. You were
Okay.
innovative. You were non-traditional because you made it
Non-traditional.
happen. And that's what you have to do to make things happen sometimes. If you're, like you said, these big teachers editions, you go to you get a new program in the school, and the directions to use the program is 5 books long. Why do I have to go to 5 different books and then put a disc in or go to a website to figure out what to do? Why can't it be in one place in snippets that I can learn on demand? That's one of the reasons that I started this podcast, so that new teachers wouldn't have to like sit through these long 5 and 6 hour professional developments. Yes, they're going to have to do it, but they can also come and hear people like you with Spark Curiosity, who's sharing 3 strategies to spark curiosity. And they may not take in all 3 strategies at one time. They may just take one. They may take the
Yes.
second part another
Hmm.
day, because even if they do them individually, they're still getting something done, and they're learning how to teach their students with innovation.
That is correct. So I'm gonna throw a question back to you. Your first year teaching, I actually got a chance to see one of your videos where you got an award and you were on TV and everything. Tell me about what was one of your biggest challenges like when it came to delivering instruction as a first year teacher?
My first year teaching, I would say my biggest challenge was getting my students to believe that they could learn, and getting them to believe that learning was for them and that they were worthy to learn. Because I taught students with learning disabilities, and they had,
Yeah.
what I found out with time is that they had been in a class where they could come in and put their heads down. They had been with a teacher that didn't, and I hate to say it because, but that this teacher didn't necessarily believe in them, or believe that they could learn. So there were no expectations. And I can remember when I finally got them to like come together so that we can learn. 10 minutes into the class, one student was like, "My head is hurting. I need a break." And literally, that was as long as he could take it. And if you think about child development, students should only be able to give their attention 1 minute for each year they are old. And at that point, I was teaching 14 and 15-year-olds. So by the time I got to 11, 12 minutes, they were done. And with boys, you can subtract a few minutes. So my biggest challenge was first getting them to believe that they could learn. Now, I taught students with learning disabilities in what people call in a special ed class. So there was no real curriculum. There were IEPs. And what I figured, and so if I have 10 students in here, that was 10 different IEPs. One of the things that I learned in college was that, and that I grew up with from home, is that reading and language and vocabulary, that was your currency. And if you could speak well, if you could read, you would have access. So out of all those courses I was supposed to teach, what I did was made sure that my students could read. I said, "Oh, we're going to read these books." And I gave them books like the Life of Wilma Rudolph. I had a young lady who was an athlete. I had gave a young man Native Son. Now these are the high level books that I'm giving them because this is what I had. And they were like, "We can't do this." Old parents started calling things. I mean, all hell broke loose. But I told them, I said, "I promise you, if you help me help them read these books," I said, "just a few pages in the evening, sit them down and you read it to them, have someone to read it to them. I promise you they can read." Because what I have found out about our children is that reading is more about confidence than it is about any of those other things, because they've been around these words and stuff all of their life. So they know these words. It's about, am I confident enough to open my mouth and say these words from a page? And then do I understand these words? So I gave them these books. It took us almost the entire semester, but by November, we were doing book reports. I told them, "You're going to have to read the book, do a book report, and make a presentation." And they did it. And it was all over after that. I didn't have to fight anymore with them because it gave them confidence that they could do that. Now, were they really high level book reports? Whatever they gave me, I cheered, I clapped, I had a little reception. I made some nachos and cheese and took some Suzy Q's and the stuff that I like to eat. You know, I wasn't there. I wasn't a home ec teacher. I was that new teacher. I was fresh from playing football in college. So my breakfast some days would be a root beer, some these sweet heat potato chips, and a Suzy Q. You know,
Mm-mm-mm.
awful, awful, awful. However, that's what we had, and they enjoyed it, and they gave them confidence. And now my students are managing real estate companies. They are managing their own businesses. They are just really doing things because they believed, and they went on to college and just did a number of things. So thank you for asking me that question. So my first year was I'm not going to say that I was structured. I'm
Yes.
not going to say that I knew exactly what I was doing, but I knew that if my students learned vocabulary, they learned to read, that they would have access to the world.
And I love what you said initially, and sometimes too, being in a special ed environment, you get to work with a smaller amount of kids, and
Yes,
you really get to know their interests. Because I heard you say one of your students were an athlete, so you
yes,
gave them a certain type of book to read where they could relate and see themselves in that book.
yes,
That's kind of advanced stuff. What you were doing right there, you were making it of interest. And the second thing that you said that I really resonate with is that you believed in them. You believed
yes,
that they were capable
yes,
of reading these books and producing something. And we have to see the 10. I always say, I put the 10 like this, that when we see a kid, we need to see this on top of their head. We need to see
yes,
the potential in them because
yes,
potential has a 10 in it.
yes, 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 yes,
Okay, and so they don't see themselves as a 10 yet. They come in as twos and threes and whatever labels they've been given over the years. And so as a teacher, that's the first shift. Before I can spark their curiosity, I have to believe in their potential. I have to believe that I'm going to give them some rigor. And I heard you say that, like, it depends on your age. And really, 7 to 8 minutes of something rigorous in a 45-minute setting can change a student's educational trajectory.
absolutely, absolutely,
7 to 8 minutes. And so we're getting to the good stuff now. Okay.
yes,
So we got the formula. The formula is, first of all, do you believe and do you have confidence that there is potential in the students in front of you?
yes,
And that your belief and your modeling can sometimes be enough to get them started, because sometimes they just needed to start. And you said in the beginning, it just took that first semester pulling teeth, even with the parents, because the parents often have low expectations for their kids. They don't
yes,
see that, hey, your child's 7 years old. Your child should be folding and washing their clothes. Wow, my child can't do that. Yes, your child can do that. You don't see the potential. I see the
yes,
potential. Your child can do a
absolutely,
lot of things. And so then once you have that set up and then you took a personal interest, you found out about their lives, you talked to their parents. Do you know how
yes,
many teachers today have never even the parents have never even seen their face? They've never seen their face, especially once you get to middle and high school where you don't have, if you're not playing sports, they're not like academic events where parents are coming out. So I'm a real big proponent of, hey, when you send out a newsletter, send a picture, make a video. Hey,
yes,
I'm such and such. These are my expectations for your student, for your children. And this is what
absolutely.
I expect of you as a parent. They be like, "What? You expect something from me?" Yes, I do. And you have to say these things because people don't know. A lot of parents, they want to do, but they just don't know how to do.
Absolutely,
So,
because I've never met a parent that does not care. Parents care. Oftentimes, they don't know how to, they don't know what to do. How many times have you heard parents say, I've done everything? And we know they haven't done everything, but they've done everything that they know to do. And one of the reasons that I've always been successful as a principal is that I had very intentional parent meetings. I would have parent meetings that look like concerts because we were, even in high schools, 500 parents are out in a high school, and they say, oh, parents don't come out to high schools. That's because you don't believe they'll come. If you set those meetings up, and first of all, you treat the students well, and the students are going home saying something different. The parents going to want to know what's going on out there. And what I found out is that the one of the best ways is to get the parents out there is to start making sure the students change their language. And they change their language by changing their mindset. And that's a lot of work. And it's not hard to get the children to change their mindsets. It's getting the people that's working in the environment sometimes that don't believe in them to change their mindset.
Yes, that
So
that implicit bias that
that's
we
implicit
we
bias.
don't know. We
I
we
like I
act
say,
like it's okay, but it's there, and we have to do self-reflection,
I
and
spent my
having those
career
self-reflection
I
time.
spent my career thinking that in low performing schools that people were there because they wanted things to be better. And I found out that there are people that will work in low performing schools because it's easy there because they can throw the excuse out that the parents don't care and the children don't want to learn. And I used to wouldn't say things like that, but it's
Yeah.
time for us to really address some issues head on with our children because our children are dying in the streets and they're dying in the streets from a lack of knowledge. That's what's happening to them. If they understood and loved themselves and knew that they could make the world a better place, this wouldn't be happening at the rate that is happening across the country. And it's only
Yeah.
happening in certain environments.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna say amen to all that because knowledge is really power. I actually I want to just tell you a quick little story. Someone I went to high school with, we also went to the same university, and come to find out, he was a science education major. I was an industrial engineering major. I haven't seen him in about 20 years, but I happened to look on my LinkedIn and I saw him, and now he's a superintendent of a seventh largest school district in America.
Mm-hmm.
And we came from a very poor community.
Mm-hmm.
We came from a community of like 12,000 people, and poverty, AIDS, I mean, anything, pregnancy, all of those stigmatisms. And then I look at this man and I say to myself, and he had immigrant parents. So the struggle was real. It's not like you came here with like a silver spoon or something, but education can just transform your life,
Change your
and
life.
your confidence in yourself can transform your life. So we
Absolutely.
we got to have that first. So I can't spark curiosity until I believe in my kids. I see their potential and I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm open. I'm fearless. I'm ready to embrace something innovative because we have to innovate. If we really want our kids to progress, you were innovating. You were saying, hey, I'm not going to accept kids reading these one level books. I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to innovate. I'm going to push them because I see what they can't see right now. And so now, fast forward, Spark Curiosity came about because I was trying to figure out how can I get my kids really connected? How can I connect the content to their lives?
Yes.
And but do it in a short period of time because I'm teaching 50-minute classes. I started off teaching middle school. I didn't have, these 90-minute blocks like
Mm-hmm.
elementary, school teachers had. And then I was like, I took an inquiry course. And this man, Dr. True, he was from the University of Central Florida. He changed my life. He was a professor. He was a Chinese professor. And he basically said he created multiple lessons though. His were like full 45-minute lessons. And I'm like, it still was too long, eventually. But that was my first introduction to inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed my life because he gave us two scenarios. He gave us he made us do a science experiment. And the first one he gave us all the directions, and we followed all the directions, because most people print out everything, and then we were able to talk, and we was just regurgitating information. We were not really thinking. The second type of experiment he gave us was he didn't even tell us what we were doing. He just said, I want you to look at these different liquids, and I want you to tell me, what do you see? What do you observe? And how does that connect to something? I can't even remember. But I do remember us at the table. Is this about this? Or is this about it? We were like going all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there was like, we were in disequilibrium. We were
Yes.
confused, but the confusion was making us think. It was making us like, pull stuff out of our brains, and we were
Yes.
teachers.
You were
And then,
curious.
yes, we were very
Yes.
curious. He had us do 2 or 3 different things. I'm like, this is how students need to learn. This is how, and it was so exciting. It was like an excitement inside of me because I wanted to know. I wanted to know, are we thinking right? Are we getting close? And then he
Mm-hmm.
led a discussion. So from that institution, which was like a 1 day event, I got a couple of his books. But again, his was every lesson. I'm like, I can't do this every lesson. This is really, really intense for every lesson.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm going to change it. I'm going to make it shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to make it 45 minutes. I'm going to make it 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only going to do it per unit.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a book called Beginner's Guide to Nearpod, a tool for transforming virtual teaching, because I was a virtual teacher for about 5 years, and Nearpod really helped me. And I created a lesson template in Nearpod. And part of the lesson template was a quick inquiry task.
Mm-hmm.
And from the quick inquiry task, I put a couple examples in there. But the more I did workshops, the more people said, can you give us more examples? So the book has over 100 examples of quick inquiry tasks, but I didn't put any standards in the book. They're all based on core concepts.
Okay.
So I looked at elementary math
Mm-hmm.
and I said, what are 20 core concepts that a student should know in third through fifth grade? Like core concepts, not this standard from this state, that state. And then from the concept, I put inquiry tasks. Here's a sample of an inquiry task to also help the teacher re-engineer their brain to be like, we're focusing on concepts.
So tell us how you define the core concept.
How do you define a core concept? You look at the standard initially, like for example, in let's do math. In math, they need to be able to do 2-digit numbers where you can multiply and you can divide, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a core concept. I don't care
Okay.
how many standards you look at, right? So from that, I would create an inquiry task. And it wasn't about, for example, one of the misconceptions students have in multiplication is that if you multiply 2 numbers, you get a larger number, right? So I would tell them, here's a scenario. I want you to come up with 2 numbers that you could multiply that are higher, but sometimes you can multiply them and they may be lower. So I'm giving them the opportunity to create kind of like their own scenario, but at the same time, we get to talk about what was similar, what was different. And a lot of kids get it right away. A lot of kids will put 0 times 150, 1 times something. And they start to make the connection that just because it's multiplication, it doesn't mean the number is going to be larger. And that was the concept I wanted them to take away. Don't just assume that multiplication means large. And don't just assume division also means smaller.
Okay. Okay. So is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your book, Spark Curiosity, that our teachers can walk away with?
One of the other things they can walk with, like besides the 100 examples, is they're going to get step-by-step guidance on how to create their own. So they'll be able to create their own from looking at the book. Also, it parallels with the online course that we're offering at campusinsights.com. But one of the other things they're going to take away is inspiration to be fearless.
Yes.
I dedicate several chapters to the growth mindset and
Yes.
making a shift because it's just really sad. They're not teaching us how to be fearless. They're teaching us how to just do what everyone else is doing, but yet you expect different results. Um, we have research, but the research doesn't know your babies.
Yes.
You have to be an action researcher. You have to be literally like setting up new instructional practices and going out and presenting those so that other people can know, hey, I'm doing this thing and this is what worked with my urban kids or this is what worked with my special education kids. Don't just look on the outside and think everything is set up because the research has not been done on the babies that are sitting right in front of you. Most research,
Absolutely.
it takes 3, 4, 5 years, and we know every 5 years we got a shift
They're
taking
switching
place
it
with
up
these
anyway.
kids.
And
Yes.
one of the things I want to address is that that's another reason I started this podcast. You talked about being fearless. Sometimes when new teachers go in fearless and they're not just doing what everyone else doing, they're punished for it. They're ostracized for it. And I want to thank you for elevating that and letting them know that it's okay to be fearless. It's okay to try something that everyone else is not doing because you know your students and new teachers oftentimes, and especially new teachers that are traditional new teachers. I'm not talking about maybe the alternate route new teachers that may be coming into the profession at 45 or 50. I'm talking about the ones that's coming in at
20.
25, 30
Mm-hmm.
years old. They're closer to the students in terms of what
Yes.
they're actually experiencing. So their approach is going to be different. And I always like that. And I would lean on those teachers because I say, well, what is this? Could you introduce this in faculty meeting? It wouldn't mean that everyone had to do it, but I wanted them to know this is some new research. This is a new piece of software. This is a new website that we can go to
Mm-hmm.
that this teacher is using and they're having success with it. Because we need our new teachers to come in, not preparing our students for our time, but preparing our students for their time. And we don't know the jobs that our children are going to have 15 or 20 years from now. Jobs are
Yeah,
changing. They're
they're
talking
changing
about,
rapidly.
right, blue collar jobs and white collar jobs. Well, now we have what's called new collar jobs. And these are jobs that students can go and get certifications and they can make $65,000, $70,000 a year. Some of them can make six figures. You have people out there with no degrees that have built seven-figure companies because of their skill set. So we're moving into a much more skill-based economy than we are this education-based economy.
We are, and AI is definitely a proponent of it because I mean, I don't have to have it all in my brain, but I need to have a structure and I need to know how to prompt it and I
Yes.
need to know what commands, to give it and then I need to know how to collaborate with others too. But I wanted to piggyback on what you said. When I came into teaching like I want students to make Bill Gates look like a midget in the streamers of time. I
Yes.
want my kids to realize that they can go out and innovate and create something that has never been created before because you have a brain. And you spoke earlier about that student brain hurting. That was one of my biggest things. I told my kids, I actually had a billboard and they had to put a yes or no. Did your brain hurt today in class? And if it didn't hurt, I didn't do my job. That brain needs to hurt for at least 6 to 8 minutes and it can change your life. And I would tell them that all the time. So I just go back and I look back at my first years of teaching and I went to conferences. I jumped into conferences.
Yes.
I got my first grant. My actually my first year of teaching, I wrote a grant for my school. My first year of teaching because I wanted to bring these innovative ideas. So to the new teachers, to the teachers who are there, don't be scared.
Yes.
There's a young baby waiting on you to step up and try something new and sometimes we just need to get some feedback from kids.
Yes.
I have in the course, I actually have a student engagement survey.
Okay.
And before they take the course, I tell them before you start any of this, get a baseline data. Give this to all of your students. Really know how they feel about how you teach it.
Yes.
Because until you know, you just assuming because scores don't tell you how people feel. So you need to know, hey, do
Mm.
I feel engaged? Do I feel like you're paying attention to me? Do I feel like you incorporate my interests? At what points is the most engaging part of my lesson? Which parts are not the most engaging part of my lesson? So that's a baseline. And then I also have them do a self reflection on their teaching. So we try to combine both of those together. But Spark Curiosity is all about creating a curious classroom using those quick inquiry tasks, giving you tons of examples and giving you inspiration to know that it's possible. And the last chapter is all about your imagination and can you see yourself doing these things? And can you start to visualize the impact and what it will have on your students? And when you start to see it, in your mind, because anything in creation is created in your brain first.
Yes.
You will see it
Preach.
in reality. But if you
Yes.
can never see it here in your mind, you can never see your kids asking questions. You can never see them collaborating. You can never see them doing the work. because we're doing too much work. I drank a lot of tea in school. I drank tea and I sit back and I let my kids work
The,
because I went to school already. I already did my learning.
the
It's
person
time
who
for them to do the learning.
the person who's doing the work is the person that's getting smarter. And that's what I tell teachers. You're working way too hard. You're going home way too tired in the evening because you've taught all day long. Your teaching shouldn't, out of a 50-minute class period, you should maybe teach 2 5-minute segments. The rest of that time, you should be facilitating discussion, facilitating activities. A good 10 minutes, I think you said even a 7 minutes of rigorous instruction was good enough. But something that you said, I want to piggyback off. When I was an elementary principal, I had a consultant to come in, and he ended his day with us by saying that test scores could not measure the spark in a kid's eye. And that stuck with
Love
me
that.
forever because we're measuring everything, but we're not measuring that excitement. We're not measuring that engagement, and we're not measuring how do they feel about what they're learning. Because see, what you feel is what you get, and that's why, as a principal, I always made sure that school was an experience.
It is.
Because
Everything is an
it's an
experience,
experience.
Terry.
You're not just
Everything is an
you're yeah,
experience.
you're not coming here just to go through the routine of the day. I'm going to do some different things. Somebody called me and said, "Hey, we had a cancellation and I have the BMX bike unit in town and they want to come in. They're going to have ramps. Can you have them at your school?" You are absolutely right. I can have them. The teachers are all upset at me because, oh, well, I had this plan today. Hey, these students are going to love coming back to your class tomorrow after this. And then
Yes.
my assistant principal, she's out there sitting on the platform in a chair and the bike going, jumping over her head. Could you imagine what the students were doing with that? And in a high school, I would have what was called Fun Fridays that we would end school an hour early and everyone just go out to the football field. The band would be out there, the dancers, the cheerleaders. I would give this set of kids who like soccer, soccer ball, the kids who like flag football or football, the ones who wanted to sit around on their cell phone, they could sit around on their cell phone. You just better not be posting and nothing better not break out. And nothing ever broke out. Out of
Mm.
5 years of doing that,
Oh my
it
goodness.
was always peaceful. And what I really enjoy about my last year there, those students who were freshmen, one of them walked up to me one day and she said, "We need a fun Friday." I said, "This baby is checking the temperature of the school." She
Mm.
understood because I needed a fun Friday. And I told her we'll have one this Friday because some Fridays we didn't have them maybe because of the
Yeah.
weather or it was
Mm-hmm.
testing, just different things going
Yes.
on.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, "We need a fun Friday." And I thought, you are exactly right. And I mean, it's just beautiful when you let children be curious, when you
Be
allow that
curious.
curiosity to just flow and ask those questions and take time. I had this person come to from the board one day, and one of my students came up to me and they were talking to me about something that they had done. Well, the teacher had told them to go to the office or whatever. Well, I always stop to take time to help them work through it. And I would go to like, what was the root cause of this? And I would get them to see, okay, had you not done this, none of these other things would have transpired. So, and the person from the board told me, and I only talked to them maybe 90 seconds, and they told me, you talked to them 2 minutes too long. I would have just suspended them. I'm going to
What's the
suspend.
lesson in that?
What's the lesson?
They need lessons. And
Absolutely.
and discipline is about teaching. People don't realize that. Discipline is to teach.
We expect discipline, but we don't teach discipline. And
Yeah.
that's what's happening to our boys and girls in schools. And that's again why they're in the streets with no type of guidance. And many of them, again, they're dying in the streets because we're not taking time to teach.
And discipline is to teach.
That's
Just
that's what
people
it
need to
is.
realize if you don't discipline a child, that means you're not teaching them. And
It's not
discipline is
punitive.
not just getting a rod and hitting someone.
No, because you haven't
It's
taught
training
anything.
them. It's training them like this is why we don't do. And I love how what I keep hearing from you is the culture, like the culture of openness. I focus on basketball. I used to play basketball in high school and part of
Oh,
college, and nobody likes a ball hog,
yes.
but many teachers are ball hogs. It's like when you're in the classroom, you should be passing the ball to the kids. Let them try, let them shoot a little hoop every now and then. They pass you
Literally.
back. And it's back and forth. It's a back and forth. But we are in this society of very strong lecture based instruction. And many of us, that's what we learn from college. we learn through our professors to just lecture, and kids don't learn that way. So this Spark Curiosity book is really about making the shift from lecturing to facilitating. And and it's just 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes of instructional time before a unit, but it's also a spark for teachers for me.
Yes.
Cuz I also, like, remember I told you I got some non-traditional ways, because once they do that, they see something they never saw before in their
We
kids,
need
and
some
then they start
non-tradition.
thinking, oh, what else can I do? And that's all I wanted a teacher to do is, okay, I did this, and this is only once every unit. What else can I do? And once a teacher asks that question, just move out of their way. They on fire now. What else
Yes.
can I do? Versus the standard is, what do they require me to do? Let me just do what's required. But when you say to yourself, what else can I do? That's when you'll be passionate. You'll have a new drive that no paycheck, no bad leadership, none of that could get in your way, because you're on fire too. So
Let's go. Let's go. Thank you so much for having Miss Olivia Odileke with us today from Spark Curiosity, a guide to quick inquiry, guys. The link will be in the bio section of this podcast so that you can purchase that book. Is it on Amazon?
it is on Amazon, and it's also on Barnes and Noble on their
Barnes and Noble.
online,
Okay,
both
let's
of
go.
those.
Let's
Yes.
go. I love it. So thank you so much. And I know you and I can talk all day about
All
our
day,
students
every
and our,
day.
yes, and because we're passionate about this
That
and
that
we
is the
know.
difference.
Absolutely.
Kindred spirit
Absolutely.
over here.
So thank you again. We're going to have you on again. You've already been on twice, and season 3 hadn't even started yet. So thank you so much. And I know I will be seeing you again soon. Again, thank you for joining us on the Teacher Support Podcast, brought to you by New Teacher University. This is a podcast by teachers for teachers. We have only award-winning teachers and administrators on this podcast. So I'm excited that you all are joining us here at New Teacher University. We have a lot planned for you here in season 3. I'm excited. I'm walking more in my authenticity as a host and as your principal. So we will be having a great season this year. And teachers, remember that there's some child somewhere, they're coming to school to see you. And until we can help them understand that they're coming to school to learn and that they're going to be better for it, let's continue to be that bridge. Let's continue to stand in the gap for our students and believe in them until they can believe in themselves. Thank you for joining us. And thank you again, Miss Olivia Odileke, author, CEO of Spark Curiosity. Thank you so much. And what's the name of your company?
Campus Insights.
Campus
Campus Insights.
Insights. Campus
Yeah.
Insights. She's CEO of Campus Insights. So thank you all again for joining us.